Good afternoon, good afternoon. Welcome to the Spools of Thread foundation paper piecing so long. It's really lovely to have you with me. I'm sorry, I've had a bit of a problem with the Facebook doing the live sessions. I'm trying to be too clever and I've managed to get the timing all wrong. But I'm here now, so hopefully you'll find me. Hopefully you'll see on my Facebook page that I am here, ready and waiting. So the sew along that we're going to do for the foundation paper piecing sort of came from the demonstration that I did for Sewing Quarter in January. I offered a pattern for this, which is the Spools of Thread pattern for a little mini quilt. And I thought it was a really nice introduction to anyone that has never done foundation paper piecing before and you wanted to give it a try. You wanted something that was a little bit interesting but not too challenging to start off with. So I came up with this design. And I've given the pattern away for free on my newsletter. And loads and loads of people have downloaded it. I'm so amazed at how many people have downloaded it. It's incredible. But there's still lots of people that haven't made it yet, and I get lots of comments from people saying, oh, you know, I'm not quite sure what to do, and I don't know where to start, and I'm a little bit nervous. So, sorry, I'm just going to turn the volume down on my phone. There's some people that just aren't really sure about what they're doing. So I thought I would do a sew along. So over the next 4 weeks, we are going to go step by step and work out how to make this. So if you're brand new to foundation paper piecing, do not panic. It's okay, we're going to go through it step by step and you're going to have all week to catch up and do what you need to do. So if you're not able to watch live today, which I know loads of people can't because you've got proper actual jobs that mean that you've got to be in an office or somewhere else, but the video will still be on the Facebook page and I'm going to try my best. I don't know whether I'll cope or not, but I will try and load it onto YouTube as well because I know some people prefer to use on YouTube. So yes, so don't panic. If you're not seeing it live, then it's okay. You've still got a week to catch up between what we do from one week to the other. So this week is week 1, and in this week, what we're going to do is we're going to cover off where you get the pattern from, the different ways that you can get hold of it, how you can download the pattern, how you print it. We'll also talk about some of the tools that you might need for foundation paper piecing, some of the fabrics that you might want to look at, and how you deal with the fabrics. And today we're going to prepare the paper pattern, so that in week 2 we can start to get on with cutting the fabrics and start actually getting into the foundation paper piecing side of things. So that's where we're going with. You have to bear with me, I'm trying to edit all of this so that you can see everything at once. The pattern that we're looking at is the Spools of Thread pattern. Like I mentioned earlier, you can get this for free if you sign up to my newsletter. All you have to do is sign up. And if you're not sure about signing up to newsletters, don't panic. I've got a blog post that I wrote the other day for people to help you guide through, because I use MailChimp, which is a software program. And there's a lot of toing and froing and click here and do this and do that and jump through a hoop and whatever. It's just the way that MailChimp works. But it's free, which helps. So I've written a blog post on that. If you don't want to sign up to a newsletter, and I totally get that, you can buy a copy of the pattern from my website, which is littleblackduck.co.uk. So that's how you can get hold of the pattern. If you are already a newsletter subscriber and you're thinking, hey, that's not fair, I'd like a copy as well. If you have a look at the latest newsletter that came out, there'll be a link in there for you that you can click on to get the pattern for free. So don't worry, you're not missing out. Okay, so the pattern itself will come in 2 completely different files. You will get the instruction file and you will get the pattern as well. And they're 2 different PDF files. You'll need to download those and save them to your computer. The instructions are on 7 different pages. Shall we have a quick look at those so you can see what you're letting yourself in for? So you've got the cover page with the picture on. On this first page, you've got just a couple of notes about what you're doing, your materials, and then it gives you a list here of the fabrics that you will need. So have a look at that. You'll also see on the website, I've got a photograph as well of the fabric requirements on the product listing on my website, so that you can see that before you decide to download, or whether you're considering buying, you can see those fabric requirements. So they're all on here. So you've got all of those. Oh, I can just see all the people watching. That's really lovely. Amanda Little, Sue Burbage, Amelia Haley, Jennifer Durkin, Oh, hello. Thank you so much for dialing in. Oh, and Becky Alexander Frost is here as well. Oh, very nice. Thank you so much. Right, the next page that you get is a colouring in diagram, and this will help you massively when you're trying to plan your fabrics and which fabrics you're going to put where, or you might be using solids, or you might take a little piece of the fabric and attach it to the diagram. It just helps you along the way. Oh, Geraldine, hi Geraldine. Oh, I'm so pleased you're joining in. It's lovely, 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 Geraldine. Right, the next page we've got is cutting out of your fabrics. Foundation paper piecing, when you buy a foundation paper piecing pattern, more often than not, you're not getting as much information as you are in this pattern. Normally, you'll just get the pattern and you're kind of on your own. And I'll show you one of my other patterns later on in the series to show you what I mean by that. But for this particular pattern, I thought it would be really useful just to show you how to actually cut all the bits and pieces out, because it kind of does help you out on your way if you're brand new. So on here, what we've got is your cutting instructions for your background fabric, and you've got cutting instructions here for your the tops and bottoms of your spools and for your binding. Now, the fabric requirements at the earlier part of the pattern talk about the fabric that you might like to use for your binding and the tops and bottoms of your spools. You can use 2 different colours. If so, you've got that information on those instructions. Or you might like to do them all in the same colour. As I have done in this one, I've got the black on the tops and bottoms of the spools and for the binding. For that, you can just about, if you're careful, you can get that out of a fat quarter. So that's just worth knowing. And then you've also got a little diagram down here to talk about cutting out your prints. Hi, Sue Reed, welcome along. Welcome along, lovely to have you. The rest of the pattern instructions talk a little bit more about construction. This diagram here is the type of diagram that you see more frequently in foundation paper piecing patterns. It talks about the different sections of creating your foundation paper piece section, and we'll cover that off. Then it talks about, the pattern talks about the construction and how you actually take your individual spools and you join all of those together to create the entire thing. So we've got that, and then last of all, you've just got a page with a photograph of the spools of thread mini wall hanging when it's completed, and some contact details for me, and my facets of the heart pattern, which has been really, really popular with those people that already know how to do foundation paper piecing, and loads of people are making that. So maybe I'll bring that on in another week so you can see that as well. Right, shall we have a look as well at the paper pattern? So the paper pattern that you get is 4 pages. Now what you need to do is, if you can see on this first page, there is a square here that is a 1-inch test square. So what you need to do is, when you go to print it out, and again, I've got a blog post on this that talks about how to print out PDF patterns right first time. So when you print out, you need to make sure that you're printing actual size and you're not scaling to fit page or any of those other settings. You have to print in actual size. So my recommendation always is to print this first page, and you've got your 1-inch test square. So once you've printed it out, if you measure that up against a small ruler, so I've got a little ruler, and I always just make sure that that square is in fact 1-inch square. Okay, so this pattern piece will have all of the different sections that you need. Oh, I've got 2 copies of page 1. That's a bit over the top. So this will be 4 pages, 3 pages. No, it's 3 pages. I got confused because I had an extra one there. So you've got your pages where you've got the piece A, piece B, and piece C, and these were all in that other diagram that I mentioned to you in the instructions, where it talked about the sections on how to pull everything together. There were sections A, B, and C. So those are what you've got on the pattern here. So you've got your A, B's, and C's. Oh, hi there, Julie. Julie's dialed in as well to watch. Nice to have you with us. So these are the pieces that you need, and you need to cut those out. So we'll do those in a minute. So what I thought I would like to do now is just talk to you about some of the tools that you might like to use when you're doing foundation paper piecing. So I have some here. Sorry, I'm very aware that the video that I'm filming from above is a little bit out of sync. So I'm really sorry about that. I've got absolutely no concept of how I can fix that. But I'm really sorry. So I'll see what we can do for next time, and just hope that that's a little bit more in sync. So the tools that you need for foundation paper piecing. Oh, sorry. Hi, Carol. Thank you for joining in. Lovely to have you with us. The tools that you need for foundation paper piecing, there aren't actually too many that you need, but these are a selection of the tools that I like to use. First of all, for cutting out the paper pattern, I like to either use some paper scissors to cut out with, or I like to use a metal ruler and a craft knife. You obviously have to be quite careful with these, but I prefer to cut this way. I just feel more comfortable. Your other option is, of course, is if you have an old rotary cutter. I've got a handle that I broke. I have no idea how I broke it, but I've kept that handle because it still kind of works. And then I take my old blades that I've used for cutting fabric that have gone a little bit dull, and you can still use those for cutting paper. They're still sharp enough for that. So you might want to cut them out that way. The other tools that I need are a mat. So you've either got your plain mat, a standard mat, or you might want to use a rotating cutting mat. It's up to you, whatever you find useful. But I find that when I'm doing more complicated pieces of foundation paper piecing, I tend to find having a rotating cutting mat a little bit easier to use. But that's entirely optional, absolutely up to you. I probably won't be using it for this demonstration, but I thought it's absolutely worth mentioning. In terms of other bits and pieces, of course, if you're for cutting out your fabrics, you'll need your rotary cutter and a ruler of sorts. Okay. You'll also need, or also will find useful, is a glue pen. I use a Soline glue pen. There's all sorts of different options that you can buy, but just anything that's a non-permanent, low-tack glue pen is really useful to use. I also tend to use some long pins. These are glass-headed long quilter's pins I find really, really useful. Oh, that's really terrible for you to see. Let me put it really close. Here you go. So they're the glass-headed pins, and they're nice and long. I find those really useful when it comes to joining the foundation paper piecing sections together, and we'll cover that off. I think next week we'll cover that off. I also find it really useful to have a couple of sewing clips, and again, that is later on down in the process where we are joining together our segments. The sewing clips are quite useful. You'll need your sewing machine, and on your sewing machine, something like a, I'll bring this one close as well for you. Oh, wrong camera, sorry. I'm here. This is a foot A for my Janome 720 Pro. Or is it an Elna? Oh, it's an Elna, sorry. Chop and change. So this is a foot A, and this is a clear foot, and this is really useful because I find it really easy to be able to see exactly where I'm going when I'm doing my stitching. You don't need a walking foot, you don't need a 1/4 inch foot, just a standard foot is absolutely fine. Okay, and then the final piece of kit that we always talk about in terms of being, I'm not always a big fan of gadgets because you can absolutely live without them. But for foundation paper piecing, an add a quarter ruler is just so useful. What it is it's got this tiny little lip, and let's see if we can see this on this camera here. Can you see how it's a little bit more chunky at this end than it is at that end? And what that does is that just sits on top of your fabric as you're sewing. The more seams and junctions that you create as you're doing foundation paper piecing, the bulkier it gets. And trimming off your seam allowances makes the whole process a lot smarter, a lot neater, less bulky. And this is just an absolute bonus for when you're trying to keep things nice and tidy. So this is what your add a quarter ruler looks like and how it comes packaged. Mine's quite an old one. So newer ones tend to be a little bit wider, and they might have like a chamfered side just to make it easier for folding papers or whatnot. Exciting news though is that I have got for you Emma Bradford. Oh my word, I can't believe it's absolutely fabulous that she's offered us this. She is offering us 20% off at Swift Quilting, which is her business that she runs, and she's allowing everyone to have 20% off. So if you do need to buy an and a quarter ruler, or you fancy buying a bit of extra fabric, because I know what we're all like. We all like to buy extra fabric from now and then, every now and then. So she's got that offer that's available. I think she said she'd do that until the end of March. Oh yes, I've written it there. It's available till the end of March, so that's absolutely fabulous. So that's perfect for topping up or getting yourself a new piece of machinery, not machinery, a new tool if you would like to get one. Right, okay, so that's covered off how you can get your pattern, downloading and printing it, and we've talked about the tools. Shall we have a little talk about some fabrics? So if I just clear this lot away and bring my fabrics in, I'll tidy up a little bit. Very little space, and I'm making a lot of mess. Okay, so the fabrics that I have, oh, hello everyone, thanks for joining in. June Blake, I don't think I've mentioned June yet, is following. And who else have we got? Carol Sanderson and Rachel Ahrens. I'm not very good at pronouncing names, but thank you all for watching. I'm really pleased you're all here, really super. Okay, so in terms of fabrics, the centre of the spools only needs really small amounts of fabric. So if you've got something in your stash that's absolutely brilliant, you might be able to pull out of your scraps or anything like that, or you might have something specific you've been waiting for ages to use. You've got lots of different options, but it's only a very small amount of fabric that you need. For my second one that I'm going to do, and I'm going to sew along with you when we do this, I have got these fabrics, which are Tula Pink. These were from a leftover from some demonstration work that I did for Sewing Quarter many moons ago. And I thought these were just absolutely wonderful. Love them, love them, love them. So these are the fabric pieces that I'm going to use. And you can see this one here, this has got like a bit of, I don't know what was on there. There must have been a label or something stuck on there. But that's okay because you only need a small amount. So we're going to take that small amount from there. So what you need to do is, well, you might be able to remember, or you might be going for something quite scrappy. It's up to you what you're doing, but you do have the option of, on this colouring sheet, you can just go in and write in which order you would like to do, which order you'd like to put your prints in, if you're worried about that. Oh, hi, Bryony. Bryony's messaging. Only just started, so we'll catch up with it properly later. I can't wait to start. I am so pleased. We're going to see loads and loads of different versions. It's going to be absolutely fabulous. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly make a note on here. Now, what you can do is you can either make a note on your diagram or take a photograph with your phone. Entirely up to you. So what I'm going to do is, because I've done this upside down, I'm going to write pink, dark pink, to write whatever makes sense to you. And we're going to call that red, orange, purple, yellow. Oh, I've got two greeny coloured ones. We'll go green, swirl. If only I knew the names for all of the proper names for the fabrics, that would be brilliant. It'd be showing off there, wouldn't it? So we've got blue, and then let's call that lime. Okay. We'll call that lime. I'll know what that means. And if I don't, someone can remind me. So now what we've got is we have a record of which fabrics we wanted and in which order. And they're all on and we're ready to go. So that's pretty much those spool fabrics all sorted. What I'm considering at the moment is for my background fabric, I'm planning on using some cream fabric. And I'm undecided at the moment as to what I'm going to use for the tops and bottoms of my spools, but I thought this would be really nice. Let me just show you on here. I'm thinking that this burgundy might be really nice to do as a binding. So I'm definitely going to use that for the binding, but I just haven't decided whether I'm going to use it for the tops and bottoms of my spools yet. So just have a think. There's no pressure, there's no rush, and if you don't catch up with it next week, it's absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. But that's what I'm going to think about over the next week as to which version I'm going to do. Okay, so what I thought I would do is just show you the paper pattern and what we're going to do with that. So if I cut out some of the first page and just show you how I do that with my trusty metal ruler and my little craft knife. What I do is I will take the the ruler and place that up against the dotted line. So you can see on the pattern piece, you've got section A and you've got the numbers 1, 2 and 3, and we will cover those off at another point. Let me just bring this up a little bit higher so that you can see. Let's see if the camera will focus. You can see the solid lines and the dotted lines. The solid lines are your stitching lines, so don't worry about those for the time being. The dotted lines are the lines that your fabric needs to go up to. So you need to make sure that when you're sewing, the fabric covers those dotted lines. And that will all make sense when we start sewing in our next edition, if you like. So what I need to do now is I need to cut either on that line or just outside that line when I'm cutting my paper pattern. I'm quite comfortable with cutting on the line, so I'm just going to use my my blade. But as I say, you can use your paper scissors, you can use an old rotary cutter, or a craft knife and ruler. But what I would suggest is that if you are using a craft knife, don't use an acrylic quilting ruler, because it will cut through those, because these blades are really sharp. So I'm just using the ruler to cut along several pieces at once, just because I find that a little bit quicker. And what you'll see is on the other pages of the pattern that you will print out, is that I've laid out all of the pattern pieces so that they're nice and close together and they're all lined up so that you can cut them out in one sweep rather than several. Makes it a little bit quicker. So just cutting out along each of these lines to create each of these individual pieces. So on this first page, you've got your a selection of A segments, and on the other pages you've got your a couple of extra A's plus your tops and bottoms for your spools, which are exactly the same pattern piece, but just to make life easy and less complicated, I've just duplicated them for you. Hi Joanne, thank you for watching. I keep saying dialing in. Dialing in's a bit of a weird phrase, isn't it? So sorry, I got delayed in getting to you. Here now, and we'll watch, but I missed on catch up. Yep, that's fab. Super. Lovely, lovely. And do ask any questions. I can't type and answer the questions, and there is a lag between what I'm saying and what I'm seeing on here. So ask any questions, and I'll go back in and answer any if needs be. Okay, so the pattern pieces you'll cut out, and you'll cut out all of those. To save a little bit of time, I have already pre-cut out a bunch of the pattern pieces already, because otherwise you don't really want to watch me do all of that. I mean, it's a sew along, but you don't want to be bored to tears. So you've got your A segments, your B segments, and your C segments. If I pull out on the pattern piece, on the pattern instructions, if I bring out for you on here, and I show you here, it shows you you've got your segments A, B, and C, and they've each got like a ready orangey line, solid line, a thicker line around each of those segments. So those are, you've got, each spool is made from an A, a B, and a C. Okay. So what you can do at this point is, if you're really not sure about what you're doing, and you're worried that you're going to get confused, and you're worried you're going to get your fabrics mixed up and that kind of thing, what you can do is you can mark on these pattern pieces. And it's also really useful to do once you move on to more complicated patterns. The pieces can get really small and you just lose track of where you're going. What you can do is on here is that you can actually write as well. If I grab my pen again, is I can put in here, I'm going to call that one red. Background, I'll just put B for background, B for background, so that when I come to do these, I know exactly which fabric is going behind each one of these. And then on the spools, let's do black, BK for black, BK. So that's piece 1 and 4. So on your, let me show you on here. So you've got your middle spool and your 2 background fabrics. And then on the A and B, these are the A and B pieces. You've got your top and bottom half of the spool, and then you've got 2 tiny little background pieces on those. So on there, this is, if I bring this up again and show you, you've got, I've done piece 1 and piece 4 as black, and then the 2 and the 3 are your background pieces. So I'm just going to write on there B for background. You could use coloured pencils or anything like that just to make your life a little bit easier. It's up to you. Hi Cindy, thank you for joining. Lovely to have you here. So what I would do is I would go ahead and mark up all of my pieces if I wasn't sure what I was doing, so that you're ready to go. The final thing that I do is just to pre-fold against all of these lines. So all of the pattern pieces, you fold back the paper as you're sewing, and some people like to fold the paper back as you are doing the sewing process, but what I find is it's easier if I pre-fold all of my lines first. So the lines that we're going to fold are the ones where you will be stitching a seam where you're joining two pieces of fabric together within a section. So I'm going to fold back the line between 1 and 2, and I'm also going to fold back the line between 1 and 3. Doesn't matter which way you fold it, but I try and be relatively accurate and fold along that line. Okay, so I've just pre-folded, and for me I find that easier as time goes on. So I'm going to fold again on the C and B pieces. I'm going to fold the line between 1 and 4, and then the lines between 1 and 2, the little pieces in the corner, and 1 and 3. I'm going to fold those as well. So just finger pressing, and don't panic if you've gone a little bit off the line. It's not the end of the world. I find it easier when you've got the bulk of the fabric underneath, because you're going to be sewing through this paper. I find it a lot easier to have pre-folded. Okay. I'm going to fold those as well. So what I would do is I would go ahead and I would fold all of the pieces on all 9 of the spools. So I am ready to go. Okay, last little bit. Okay, right, so where we've got to. So what we've done is we've talked about how you can get hold of the pattern. So don't forget, if you subscribe to the newsletter, you can get a copy for absolutely free. If you are already a newspaper? If you're already a newsletter subscriber, if you're already a newsletter subscriber, then there'll be a link in the latest newsletter where you can download a free copy. If you would like to buy a copy, you can go onto my website, which is littleblackduck.co.uk, and you can buy a copy, because I know some people's inboxes are just full of newsletters and advertising and whatever. So if you don't want to, you can download a copy of that pattern. I think I've charged about £4 for that. We've talked about downloading and printing. Go to the website if you need some help with downloading and printing that out right first time. We've talked about some tools. Don't forget the discount that we've got. I'll show you that again from Emma Bradford. Thank you so much, Emma. 20% off at Swift Quilting. And so if you want to get yourself an add a quarter ruler or maybe some fabric or something like that, that would be, yeah, super. I'm really pleased, really pleased. What else have we talked about? We talked about fabric. So have a look in your stash, see what you've got in your scrap, see if you've got something a little bit special that you want to use. Try and get your fabric sorted. The amount that you need is within the instructions, so don't worry about that. And we've also talked about preparing your pattern pieces, cutting them out and preparing those. Oh, I've just seen a message from Sue. Sue's asked, do you ever use a postcard for folding? I find that helps a lot. You absolutely can, and we'll look at that next week when we come to do the construction, the other method that some people use for using the postcard. And actually some people, I made a big fat mess, I'm really sorry, in here somewhere. Oh, I've lost it. The card that your add a quarter ruler comes with. Some people use the card, the backing card for that when they're doing their foundation paper piece. Where on earth that's gone? I've got no clue. But you can use that as well. So that's a nice option. But we'll cover that off next week when we're doing our construction. So next week we're going to talk about cutting the fabrics, and I'll show you how I cut out using those instructions with the cutting plan. To take you through all of that, and then we will start to go through the basics of foundation paper piecing and what it is and how to do it, and we will construct a spool block, one of those little sections. We'll create one of those. We may even create 2 of those just so that we've repeated the process and you know what we're doing. So yeah, and if you've got any questions, let me know, and we can cover anything off. But I really hope that's been useful. And I'm so pleased you've joined. There's 18 people watching at the moment. And I thought if I can have 10 people, I'll be really pleased. Because I know it's really hard because people are busy with work and life and whatever. And I know this is right in the middle of the day. But I'm filming from Gibraltar and the children need picking up from school a bit. So I had to do it this time. It was either that or they were going to be here. When I was setting up all of this, they're like sticking their faces under the screen and waving and stuff. And I thought, I cannot do this when they're around. So this is why it's now. Hopefully I'll be able to get it loaded up to YouTube and you'll be able to catch up nice and easily with anything that you've missed, because I know some people are dialing in a little bit late. Jess, thank you so much for your comment. This is so helpful. I'm really pleased and I really hope it inspires you to give the Spools of Thread pattern a try. I'm really, really pleased. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to put some details up of where you can get hold of me. And if not, leave a comment with any questions and I'll catch up with you next week.